Do you wave your terrible towel when Renegade plays? Reach for a tasty cake when JJ shouts, "He scores!" Does the sound of an F1 engine make your heart race? Doing push-ups with the Nittany Lion after a TD? Then lend us an ear, and we will share the exhilaration of Steelers football, the excitement of Flyers hockey, the nail-biting finishes of F1, and the pride when we yell, "We are Penn State." Welcome to the SteelFlyers Show, the strangest combination of sports fandom since pineapple was put on pizza. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the SteelFlyers All Sports Network. We got a very special show lined up for you today, folks. That's right. We're sitting here with the great Pearlo Wisdom. How you doing, Pearlo?
Good, man. Good.
Yeah.
Lots of playoff hockey. It's been a great year so far.
Exactly.
We got a couple people didn't make it.
Exactly.
Couple
teams got eliminated, and it's funny that you mentioned that, because we've both been watching a lot of playoff hockey. We've been taking notice to quite a few things that have happened in the last two nights, and we've had a few teams eliminated, and we're going to call this the Eliminator Series. Okay. We're going to pile up all the teams that got eliminated, and we're going to talk about potentially what they are going to do, what they need to do, and why they may be lost.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the first one I think we have to address is the one that happened the most recent. Okay. And that's the New York Islanders scoring 2 goals in 13 seconds to pretty much take the Penguins out and drop the number 1 seed, is now out of the playoffs for the second year in a row. They're out of the playoffs in the first round. Last year, they didn't even make the first round. The previous year, they were dropped out of the first round. They've lost the last 16 playoff games to lose. I mean, they just have not been winning in the playoffs.
Well, they've lost in the first round the last 3 years, haven't they?
That's what I mean. So, when you lose like that in the first round, that makes it kind of tough, especially now you actually have to go 4 years.
Yeah,
because
last year was, I think, even a worse one. They lost to Montreal.
But that's what I mean, right? But that wasn't, they didn't make the playoffs. They just qualified for the qualifier.
Actually, Montreal, did both of them
they
just
beat
qualify?
them. Montreal was one of the qualifiers, they beat them.
Yeah.
And then they were the ones that allowed to move on, and Pittsburgh was not.
Yeah, and Montreal had a worse team than they had this year.
Exactly. I think so too. I agree.
Although Price did play last time. It's the last time
he played really well. Yeah, he played really well last year in the playoffs, especially.
Only time in 2 years that Price played really up to close to where his standard is. Yeah.
I agree. But so now the Islanders, the 4th seed, are now moving on to play the Boston Bruins, who eliminated the Washington Capitals, which that's the other team we're going to talk about too. And we could actually do the combination as well too, because Florida was eliminated and St. Louis has been eliminated as well too.
We'll do those next.
We'll do those. Trust me, we have enough to talk about here. Okay, this is the Eliminator Series. So, the first 2 teams we're going to talk about is the Pittsburgh Penguins and the Islanders, and they were eliminated last evening. The score was 5-2, or 5-3. I'm sorry, 5-3. And the Islanders looked like their Islander self. I mean, even though they've been kind of missing Lee, they've been playing they've been playing up to Pittsburgh. Okay.
Yeah.
And the sad thing about Pittsburgh in this series is that their big names did not step up. You didn't hear a lot from Crosby. You didn't hear a lot from Malkin, even though Malkin missed a game or 2 during the series. But all you really heard was from Jeff Carter.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? You didn't really hear much from Rusk. You didn't really hear much from Gensel. You didn't really, that whole line throughout the whole year with Crosby, every one of them guys had over 20 goals, right? And they sort of disappeared here in the playoffs.
Yeah. From what I was seeing with Crosby, he's injured.
Okay.
He's not playing in the areas that he normally plays.
Okay, so
he was playing very perimeter. He wasn't getting into, and the one time he did, if you noticed last night, you were watching that game, see how long it took him to get up from that?
Yeah, that
Yeah.
did take a little bit longer.
That looked like back. He's got some back issues or something going on there. He doesn't look good.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Because he just hasn't looked right at all this whole series.
No.
You know,
I'd say back or hip, or I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but he's not getting up like he normally does. He doesn't have that same spark. And he's playing way perimeter. Like, when does Crosby play perimeter ever? Like,
right.
Unless he's hurt.
But he also didn't have very many points. He didn't have much. He didn't show up on the score sheet very much.
And if he's injured, that whole line is, what's rust without Crosby? If he's on any other team, what's rust without Crosby?
Okay. I mean, I get it. I get it. If you put those two guys that Crosby was with on his line and any other line, would they be that good? No. Would they score that many goals? Probably
Unless
not.
It's like McDavid or somebody.
Well, or Draisaitl.
Somebody equally as
I'm with you.
But anyways, we're talking about what's Pittsburgh gonna do now.
So now what are they gonna do now? Because they hired Hextall. They brought him in to basically, I guess, retool. I guess if you don't want to use the rebuild word, you have to do the retool word or something word, because let's face it, the Islanders figured out Jari rather quickly.
Yeah.
Okay, and he was exposed.
He was horrible.
He was highly exposed. I'm sorry, but every goalie that I've talked to that's played, and I've talked to one that's played in the NHL and one that hasn't, and every one of them said, so what's your strong suit? Glove side.
Yeah.
Okay, so if glove side is your strong, how is that? Well, that didn't really take into account for Jari, because that's not his strong suit. He doesn't
have an NHL. Well, I mean, let me put it this way. Jari did. He is, ever since Murray left and he was left out for his own, I think it got into his head. He wasn't psychologically ready to be a number one goaltender. I think that's the problem. And unfortunately, I think doing that might ruin him. It might. It might ruin him completely. We've seen it happen with other goaltenders that have been put in those spots. Murray. I mean,
yeah, he had to get away from Pittsburgh though, and
he didn't have a great season in Ottawa. There was injuries and all that kind of stuff like that. But I think Murray came from a different perspective. Murray got too big in his head and thought he was the greatest thing since sliced bread.
But Murray also had Fleury.
Exactly. And he had Fleury. Here's this poor Jari guy whose mentor is a guy who's struggling himself, and now you're going to make him a number one? Like, I love the skill of Jari, but it's a mental game, right? We've seen it in Philly. It's a mental game, and I think the Pittsburgh had made a big mistake.
With these goaltending. Yeah, I'm with you on that. They really. This is another reason why I think Hextall was brought in, because I think he's going to find them a goalie that's going to be...
Right. Okay, let's get to the checklist then. First things first. Okay, let's look at what Pittsburgh's likely going to do. Look, historically speaking, like you said, a stripped-down rebuild is pretty much out of the question. Ownership doesn't seem to want anything to do with that.
Right.
So you bring in a guy,
and their money situation is not going to allow for that either.
What, a stripped down rebuild?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, the people you have to trade to get the assets for would be difficult.
That's what I mean.
But
so you're not going to be able to. Yeah, you're not going to be able to do a full rebuild the way you want to, because you're going to have people that are going to need to be moved, and or you're going to have to worry about money and contracts.
Well, you can. You're just not going to get much back, so you're going to suck for a long time. Like, if Pittsburgh wants to do this, they're going to not be good for a very long time, I would say, unless Hextall does something magical, which I think he was on the road to doing in Philadelphia pretty darn good. He was doing a fairly quick rebuild in Philadelphia before they let him go. And so I think that's the reason why they hired Hextall, is they saw that he was able to identify young talent that was almost ready now, rather than just getting firsts and being able to do that. And he waited for markets to open up, and his timing was really good. Let's face it, I mean, he did a great job in Philadelphia.
Do you know, here's another thing that I'm thinking too. He might actually be trying to pluck some cross-state players. Know what I mean? Because he drafted a lot of the guys that the Flyers are looking to potentially either move on from or try to get some value
I
for
could
some of
see
the
him giving
guys.
Patrick another chance.
Right.
I could see him doing that.
Right. Okay.
If he figures he knows what makes him tick, and they have people in there that are going to
Or if another player becomes available for Philadelphia that was one of his picks, I'm sure he would give them high consideration.
sure.
A la Sanheim or somebody, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know why Philadelphia would.
No, but I mean, I'm just saying if.
Yeah, but I see what you mean. Yeah, I'm sure he'll look at all aspects. I was really impressed with what Extall did. So we look at their roster though. What are they going to do? You said the first thing is a goaltending, no doubt about it. I don't think they're getting out of that Jari contract right now. So whatever goaltender they're going to get, they got to get a goaltender that can work with him. I seriously think the first thing they're going to do is call Vegas and see if Vegas will now cover some of that. I don't know how they're going to be able to do it. Cover some of that Fleury contract. I think it's possible. Or even, how about this? Straight across, Letang for Fleury. Letang has only got 1 year left. Fleury's making about the same amount of money. The only chance Pittsburgh has right now, as far as I'm concerned, is if they grab a goaltender that can save their butt.
Okay.
Something like that. I could see Pittsburgh doing something like that.
Yeah, Jari signed until 23.
Yeah, and how much is he making? $3 million.
Three and a half.
That's about, then you're throwing $10 million next year at goaltenders. But if anybody, if there was ever a year that shows how the value of goaltenders, it's this year.
They're gonna have. They got Malkin is only signed until next year at 9.5. Right, Crosby signed until 25. Gensel signed until 24.
Mm-hmm.
Zucker signed until 23.
How much is he making?
5.5. Yep.
Might be able to do some of that contract.
Brandon Tanev is slated to go to 25. He's making 3.5.
He's not going anywhere.
Brian Rust is making 3.5, and he's available. He has 1 year left on his deal at 3.5.
Yeah, I don't think that would be wise to trade that either.
And Kapanen has 1 more year left on his deal at 3.2.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then they got Jared McCann, and then Jeff Carter has 1 more year as well, too. After that, everybody else needs to be re-signed.
And then they can then from that see where they are at that point. That's why I think they're going to go 1 more year to try to give her a shot. And if things aren't looking good, then
Letang is signed until 2022.
Yeah. Letang's contract is tradable. He's still putting up good points at 34 years old. That's a tradable contract. Now maybe it's not Fleury, but I think you got to look at getting a goaltender and a pick or something like that from somewhere. Or I don't know. There could be goaltenders falling off the tree pretty good here, because the good news for them is the expansion draft is coming up and everybody has to protect 1 goaltender. So that leaves 1 goaltender out, right? So there's going to be a lot of goaltenders on the market right now. And if they're really smart, they might be able to pick up 1 at a pretty decent price, I guess. But I wouldn't want to be screwing around with it. I'd be looking at like Darcy Kemper or somebody like anything.
Yeah, anything would be better, because now Dumoulin, Letang, Tanev, Zucker, Crosby, and Malkin are the ones that have no movement clauses. So those will be the ones that Pittsburgh is going to protect.
complete no movement clauses, or is it?
Well, Malkin and Crosby have no movement clauses, and then Zucker and Tanev have
limited. No
yeah, and then the same thing with Letang, and the same thing with Dumoulin.
Yeah. So Letang, Letang has an 18-team can trade to list.
Right, but see, now here's the thing: you start trading away some of these core pieces, and now you're not winning. I mean, you're not keeping the core together to keep winning. Then.
Well, I think this is, now that you brought this up, I think this is what they're going to do. I'm just going by what Pittsburgh is and has done. They're not going to do a rebuild like that, or at least they're going to do everything they can to not do a complete tear down rebuild for the next 5
That's what I mean.
Years.
They really can't, and they have almost no cap space.
Yeah, but they will, and that's what I'm saying is, okay, after next year, like you said, you got Brian Rust either coming off the books or has to be re-signed, right?
Yeah.
Jeff Carter will be off the books.
After next year.
After next year. He's only doing 10-6 because LA's covering it, or 2-6 because LA's covering
2-6, right yeah.
Now. Evgeny Malkin is going to be the interesting one. He's 35 years old. At the very least, if they do re-sign him, it's not going to be at 9.5. So they'll have maybe half of that if you're lucky.
Do you know what? To be honest with you, I think that we might have seen the last of Malkin in Pittsburgh.
From what I understand, and of course they say this all the time, he's got a complete no movement clause. If they asked him to be traded, he's going back to Russia. That's what those are just words. They can change really quick. They can say whatever they want to say. Basically, him saying he doesn't want to leave. He has no interest in leaving.
Well, then if that's going to be the case,
to say something like that to do that.
If that's going to be the case, then you're going to have to take a little bit more of a friendlier deal than 9.5.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know what that's. Yeah, at that time, 2 years from now, what's Malkin going to look like? I think he probably can get $4 million, something like that. And okay, so and you have Chris Letang. Right now, they can trade Chris Letang for a decent. I think he's definitely gone.
So you think Letang is more gone than Malkin?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, I do, because Malkin. I think Letang will take that trade better than Malkin will. And Malkin's making $9.5 million. It's pretty difficult, and they're not going to want to retain anything because of cap issues. They're looking to get as much cap space as they possibly can this year.
Yeah, because they have none.
Get a goaltender and another defenseman that's cheaper than Chris Letang, and go for it again with whatever they have left. I think that's what they're going to do.
Okay, well, if you're going to do that, then let's see here. Yannick Weber needs to be re-signed. Cody Ceci needs to be re-signed. Rodriguez, Janikowski, and Frederic Gaudreau will need to be re-signed.
Yeah.
Bluger, Zorhan, Bjorkquist, O'Connor, and Colton will all need to be re-signed for next year.
Sevier will either take a league minimum or go somewhere else. Aston Reese, that'll be interesting. He's a restricted free agent. He really has no leverage at all, but they will have to sign him to at least $1 million. Teddy Bluger will be, again, same thing. He has nothing to. He's might make a little bit of a raise, and that's it. Frederic Gaudreau. Let's put it this way: if I'm somebody out there right now, Frederic Gaudreau is a guy I'm putting. He's a late bloomer and he looks really good. He probably is going to get priced out of Pittsburgh.
700,000. he's making, and he needs to be re-signed. He doesn't have. He's a
UFA.
Yeah.
And I think somebody out there is going to give him $1 million plus, and I think that's going to price him out of Pittsburgh. Jankowski better be happy with getting league minimum because he did nothing. So, and then Ivan Rodriguez, that'll be interesting too. So they got a lot of interesting things to do there in Pittsburgh, but I really think they'll just sign whoever they can, and really I think they're going to tell themselves goaltending was our problem. If we solve our goaltending, we'll give it another shot. That's what I think they're going to do.
That makes a lot of sense.
And then halfway through the year, they're going to go, we'll have more cap space, not the trade deadline. They'll do what they always do. They'll add some more pieces for wherever they think they need it and give it another shot. And I think that shot will end up being pretty much what it's been the last 3 years.
Yeah.
And then maybe then we'll start hearing the rebuild words start to come
out. All right. So now I guess the next team that got eliminated was the Washington Capitals.
Mm-hmm.
And the Boston Bruins kind of made short work of that.
Yeah, that's funny. I had them at 5 too. I didn't think they were going to do well.
But that was another game too where, I think this had a lot to do with the way Boston played, but the big guns in Washington didn't show up.
Yeah.
Ovechkin was barely on the score sheet. Oshie was barely on the score sheet. Mantha completely disappeared.
Yep. Yeah, I don't think. I think they could be in trouble with Anthony Mantha. Next year is going to be a huge year for him. I mean, if Stevie Y trades a 25-year-old guy who is supposed to be a projected 40-goal scorer, there's probably a problem.
Probably a problem.
Stevie Y is an absolute genius. He hardly ever makes any mistakes.
Yeah.
And it's a red flag. If I'm talking to Stevie Y and he's saying, how about Anthony Mantha? I'm like, yeah, what's wrong with him?
But he got a number 1 pick for him, though.
I know, he got huge. I think that trade could end up. Verana, has been hungry to move up the lineup. He showed a lot of character not asking out of Washington before he did, because they were playing him low minutes for a long time there.
Yeah.
And he ended up taking lower contracts to stay there. So he showed a lot of character, right? And what does Stevie Y like, right?
Character.
Yeah. And Anthony Mantha maybe hasn't been showing the character that
apparently not, because he's not with Detroit anymore.
This trade could end up being really bad.
I see. Yeah, that's what I think too. I think it's going to bode really well for Detroit, but not so well for Washington. Look, I was not surprised at all. And we talked about this in the last couple of shows, how you come into the playoffs with momentum, which is what Boston did. And Washington looked hurt. They were hobbling in. Ovechkin didn't even play in the last couple of games, or he played in the last game, but was hurt going in. You know what I mean? I think he's hurt still now. You're not going to hear, because he didn't show up either.
I think they had a problem, and just a problem in the room in general in Washington, and they have for a bit. Kuznetsov, who looks like he's definitely going to be traded, seems to be at the part of the heart of the issue from the outside looking in. I don't have any inside information on that, but just from the appearances, there's been a lot of issues with him. He had a party. He doesn't look like the sharpest knife in the drawer to be getting caught.
Okay.
To allowing people to take pictures of him while he's surrounded by cocaine. He's pretty lucky he got away with what he got away with. He makes some, just because I'm around cocaine doesn't mean I'm doing it. Okay. But the fact that you allow people to take pictures of you while you're around cocaine makes me think you're probably doing it or something, because that's pretty stupid.
Okay.
Anyways.
That's definitely for sure, and here's the other thing too, and $7.8 million until 2025 is what his contract is, and that is just whoa.
So they're probably going to have to sell relatively low on Kuznetsov. I think they'll be lucky to get a first-round pick or something like that after everything.
They're going to have to eat. They're going to have to eat, because there's no way you can that 7.8 for that amount of time.
Looking at it, like some places that he could go, Columbus is looking for a center, but I think they're in a teardown, so I don't think they're going to do that. But
well, they're also looking for a new coach too. So I mean, you never know.
yeah,
You never know who coaches are going to try and put together teams and stuff like that. Because, I mean, there's
you know who's going to take him? Absolutely no doubt about it. You know who's going to take him? Sorry about that to jump all over you.
No.
Almost for sure. Almost for sure. The Montreal Canadiens are going to take him. They love their troubled Russians. They freaking got them all. They took them all. Every single one of them, like that,
but you
are
know
like
what though? That actually makes a lot of sense.
Kovalchuk, because they need a veteran center. I don't know, like, is he's the guy that you want to have as a veteran? But I mean,
okay. So look, here's the big elephant in the room here, and we've all heard it, seen it, talked about it. Ovechkin came out and basically squashed the rumors. Oh, is he coming back? Is he coming back?
Yeah.
This was his last year of his contract. He says he wants to come back. The team says that they want to re-sign him, but
similar to Pittsburgh, I think this is what they'll do. They get what they can for Kuznetsov. And now, okay, they got Anthony Mantha, who's 26 years old and he's making $5 million a year. So, for whatever reason, they didn't want Verana in that spot. I'm thinking it's positional. Mantha's a left winger. I believe Verana was a right winger. So, I thought there would be a left winger available. Who normally plays? Oh, it's Oshie. They're not trading Oshie.
No,
Oshie's right.
He's the right winger.
No, he did replace Verana, so I'm not really sure. Weird about that. I thought maybe they got Mantha for positional reasons, so they could trade somebody out, so they could get some more cap room. But
no, they brought him in to play that position. You know,
they are. Yeah, that's where they're gonna have to trade.
Here's the thing, though, with Washington, they have zero money to play with.
Well, after they trade Kuznetsov, they'll have some money.
Right. The only players that need to be re-signed for next year is Ovechkin and Chara and Paul Ledoux. That's it.
And Ovechkin's going to sign for less.
And Anderson is also a UFA as well too. But Vanacek is signed till 2022.
Yeah, Anderson's going to retire. Chara, you give him a league minimum if he wants to play.
Which is what he got this year, $795,000.
Now that was prorated because it was a small, shorter season. He might want a little more than that. I don't know, but maybe not. But Ovechkin will get. He said by the sounds of the way he's talking, he's willing to go like half of the salary. So they might have if they lose Kuznetsov and you bring back like say half of that gives them $8 million to work with for another center.
So, wait, hold on. So if you get rid of Kuznetsov, right, that's 7.8, and you sign Ovechkin for 5, that only leaves you 3.
No, if you lose Kuznetsov and I don't know if they're going to have to. I don't think
they have this much right now. They have this much right now. If you lose Kuznetsov, now you have $7.8 million that you can spend. You spend 5 of that on Ovechkin. Now that only gives you $3 million, and you still got to bring in another center.
I don't look at it that way because Ovechkin was making 9.5. So if you sign him for 5, you got 4.5 to work with. If you lose Kuznetsov, you've got 12 point something million to work with.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay, because he counted 9.5 on the books from last year. Right. He's only counting for 4 or 5 million this year. And okay, so that still gives you, let's see, 10 million, 11 million.
Yeah, And now, if I'm them, what I would do is I would entertain putting TJ Oshie back in the middle again.
Yep.
And then it's easier to find wingers and then find a filler winger to put on that spot, because I think their biggest problem is on defense. I really am not a fan of their. I don't think Justin Schultz is.
Yeah, and he's making $4 million, right?
Jensen.
And Dylan is making 3.9. Jensen's making 2.5.
Yeah.
Riemsdyk is doing. I mean, he's got 800,000 this year, and then 950,000 the next 2 years. I mean,
Dylan had a really good year. I like.
Yeah, he did, and I think Carlson had a pretty decent year too.
Yeah, he had his normal year.
Right, and Orlov didn't have too bad of a year.
I don't think he's progressed as much as I thought he would.
I agree.
He's been on the decline ever since they won the cup. He's been going downhill.
And that's he's 29. He'll be 30.
Yeah,
right. He'll be 30 at 5.1 million. He might be another one that could potentially be on the block for them too. You know what I mean? To try to get some. Because look, they need to re-sign Ovechkin. They need to bring in another center and or winger, depending on if you move Oshie or not. Either way, you still need another forward, right, to come in and take over that spot. And you need to either replace Chara or re-sign Chara, and you need a better backup goalie.
I think Vanacek is fine as a backup as long as all he is a backup. Like, you don't want to play him too much. And what you really got to cross your fingers on is Samsonov doesn't get injured anymore and progresses. That's really the big thing for them. Because if he doesn't progress, they're in big trouble. Now, no matter what they do, they're in big trouble.
Right. Now they are going to potentially get what is it? Michael Kempney is going to be he's on long term, right? Right. And then
they got the one
Lundqvist. Lundqvist is actually a UFA after this season. So at the end of so I mean, I don't know what they're
whether he comes back next year. I mean, he's been talking about that. They can go back to whatever they were doing. They've got Connor McMichael, who how did he do in the AHL? That's top for centers. That's what I think. I don't think they're going to add another center. He had 27 points in 33 games as a 20-year-old in the AHL. That's pretty good. They could give him a good shot. I think that's what they'll do. I think they'll work with what they got in their minor league system, see if they can fill that center hole that Kuznetsov is leaving. And then if it doesn't work out at the trade deadline, maybe they look at something like that.
Their first-round draft pick, Hendrik Lapierre, could potentially be that.
Yeah, well, I don't think because of the injury when he was drafted.
Yeah.
He had 31 points in 21 games in the QMHL this year. That's not great. In the Q, that's not really knocking it out of the park. I think he's going to need a year to recoup. That injury was pretty brutal. So he's going to need to recuperate.
But I mean, he is potentially the future for them.
Somewhere down the road, hopefully.
Right. Yeah, but he is potentially the future for them.
Yeah, it was a nice pickup late first that they gave him a shot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But so that's what I think I think what I'm using the word a lot here. I think they're rolling the dice a lot with some things here. Ilya Samsonov is only 24 years old. I mean, right? So he's done very well as long as he can stay healthy.
But he's a restricted free agent.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I mean, because of everything that's happened, he's not gonna be demanding too much money. You're right though with Vanacek. It would be good to get a veteran to help out Samsonov if Lundqvist isn't coming back, but that shouldn't be too expensive either. Especially with the expansion draft now coming up, like I said, with Pittsburgh, there's going to be some goalies falling off the tree and available. So that shouldn't be too difficult to do. But with their $12 million that they have after they sign Ovechkin to what I figured he might sign for, and if they do trading Kuznetsov, maybe getting somebody back from that will be a little bit. I would personally not worry about your forwards. I'd be looking at trying to add something on the D.
Well, they have to protect Backstrom, Oshie, Ovechkin. Even Kuznetsov is on now he does have a limited no trade clause.
I think they could. There's the way to solve the problem and get rid of your cap space. See if Seattle will take him. Does he have a no trade clause?
Yes.
Does he have a no movement clause though?
He has a limited, and then he has a no trade clause.
Okay, no trade clauses. You have to protect them. So
right.
They can be unprotected. So they could.
The no movement clause. The no movement clause is you have to protect, but the no trade clause.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I don't think they're going to have a problem with their protection list on it.
Yeah, I don't either. Yeah, but there's somebody that could be plucked from that list that potentially they can't.
I would say I would leave Kuznetsov off, and that would solve the problem.
Well, he unfortunately, because of his no movement clause or no trade clause, he has to be one of the ones that's protected.
No, he doesn't. He has he doesn't have a no movement clause. He has a no trade clause, so he doesn't have to be protected.
Okay.
If you have a no movement clause, you have to protect him. But if you have a no trade clause, you don't.
Okay, I wasn't sure about what that was.
This isn't a trade. That's the
true.
way
yeah, that's true. It's not a trade. I'm taking this player off of your team, and he's coming to my team. There's no trade happening here. You're not getting anything back from me. I'm just taking this player.
The players' union or whatever came up with this idea.
Yeah.
So, anyways, he's going to have to. They might leave him off unless they can trade him before the expansion draft, which is possible too. Somebody might pick him up before the expansion draft. It's going to make that a very difficult trade because whoever picks him up. That means they have to. That's one more person that they have to. Because if they pick them up, they're going to protect them, right? So that's one more team that it's going to make it very difficult. I would just leave them off. If they happen to take them, then okay, you took the full 7-8 off your books and you work on your defense. If they don't take them, then you can trade them afterwards and do whatever the case may be.
Right, because 2 days later is going to be the draft anyway. So.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it, folks. We talked about the we talked about some teams that have been eliminated so far. We're going to continue this series called the Eliminator Series, where we talk about the teams that have been eliminated from playoffs and what exactly they're going to do in this offseason and maybe how they lost and how they could potentially get back to contention. So we were joined by the Great Pearlo Wisdom. Thank you very much for hopping on here, buddy.
No problems.
Yeah, man, we got to talk about some great hockey as always. This is the SteelFlyers All Sports Network. Thank you very much for joining us. Just remember, folks, stay strong, stay safe, and hang tough.
Yeah. Take